Hello and welcome to On the Preds with me, Alex Doherty, your host of A to Z Sports, and Shaun Smith of On the Forecheck. We are here to talk about the Nashville Predators. It is episode 22. We're recording on a Monday because the Predators played last night, and it has been a very eventful week. We had the trade deadline. We had 4 games. The Predators played 4 games this week, and we have a lot of things to talk about. Shaun, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good, Alex. Spring break for me, so got a solid night's sleep, and I'm
All right.
jazzed up and ready to go.
Spring break. Time for spring break. I don't think that the Predators. Well, I think the Predators are not likely to go on spring break anytime soon because they are in the middle of a really hectic series of games, and they don't seem like they need a break. They need to keep rolling because of last night's win over the who was it? Who did they even play last night?
You serious? The Flyers.
The Flyers, and then also the terrible couple of games that they played earlier in that week. They need to continue the win streak going. We're going to recap all of the games for this week. 2 dominant wins, 2 blowout losses. We will discuss those. We will briefly talk about the trade deadline moves. We're a little bit past that, but we're going to briefly talk about maybe just one of them, and then potentially some goaltending issues have cropped up. I don't think we have to panic about those, but it is something to consider. There's some goaltending, specifically with Juuse Saros, that we will talk about. So there's that. Are you worried yet about Juuse?
No, I'm not. It's really not as much about being worried about the goaltender as much as I'm thinking about just, and maybe we'll talk about it more when we get to it, but just the fact that having had Pekka Rinne in town for so long, I think, as a hockey fandom, the Predators fans have kind of developed this idea that you can't say anything about the goalie. It's never the goalie.
Yeah.
And if you look at it's like, I don't know, like the Oilers fan base or something, like they're ready to drag their goalie out into the streets and beat him to death at the drop of a hat. So it's just very vocal about it. So it's just very funny that you're like, I think when you start to say, oh, maybe you have any concerns, it's like, gosh, I don't want to say if I do or not, because that's considered like the one of the cardinal sins here in this fandom.
Yeah.
So
I would agree with that, and we'll touch on that later.
Yeah.
I think UC is going to be fine, but so one thing that's not going to be fine, and this sounds like I'm making this up because of what I'm about to talk about. I have had a serious back issue crop up over the last 3 or 4 days because I don't know why it's happened, but I went to a wedding over the weekend. My brother got married. I had a lot to do in that. And it really popped up on a Friday night, and it was kind of made the wedding a little bit miserable. But one thing that I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to have to go to relax the back. And I'm honestly going to do this because I need to get someone to tell me what's going on with my back. I want to work better, live better, and feel better every day. So I'm going to check out Relax the Back, because if I sleep well, I will live well. And that is the big issue. I cannot sleep well with this back issue. It's really, really bothering me. So when I go, I'm going to get customized comfort for sleep, work, or just relaxing at home. They have things like the perfect chair with the 0 gravity position, which is something that I think I would really need, because I think the issue is my pressure on my back muscles is causing more pain. They have some intense massage chair. I might not look at those, but they've also got Technogel mattresses, which are better than memory foam. Like me, you've got to check out the store, because they've got a sleep agent on hand every day to help figure out how to sleep better and resolve any pain issues. The store is at 2020 Glen Echo Road in Green Hills. And there you can learn about the 4 pillars of wellness: healthy sleep, healthy work, healthy body, healthy mind. So I've got to figure out a time this week when I can go to Relax the Back and live wellness. I can learn what is going on with my back and figure out how to fix it. So again, sounds like I made that up just for the ad read there, but I really am not making this up. My back really hurts.
I personally, Alex, I've got a week off from work, and I'm planning on heading there myself.
Okay.
Just to see. Got a couple of things I want to find out, so I'll report back.
Yeah,
as soon as I can.
There you go. All right, let's recap the last week. So go all the way back. We're going to skip trade deadline stuff for now. We're going to come back to that.
Okay.
The win over the Anaheim. So they play the Anaheim Ducks Monday night. Was that right? Monday night? I think that's right.
I think so.
The Ducks, who are out of it, but they're rebuilding quickly. Not an easy team ever to play. The Preds were down 1-0 early, but then Roman Josi slices through, ties it up with his 18th goal of the year. Then in the second, Ryan Johansson and Troy Terry trade a couple goals. So it's 2-2 going into the third. And then Philip Forsberg and Matt Duchene just absolutely go to work. They combine for 4 goals in the third period, assisting on each other's goals, scoring goals, pushing the Preds past the Ducks. 6-3 is the final score. And I want to show one video that was from this game, but also compares it to a previous goal. So there are 2 goals here you're going to see. One is from the Ducks game, and one is from a game earlier in the year featuring Philip Forsberg. And see if you can notice how similar these goals are.
He's already moving towards the front as he accepts it. And because he does, that gives him the ability to quickly move that puck into scoring territory. The fact that he finishes it off with that between the legs shot is remarkable. But the key,
and then watch Forsberg. I mean, this guy just makes plays that most players don't think of. Right through the wickets and right up near the top of the net. Josi on the wraparound attempt. Forsberg had to adjust a little bit if the puck was on.
So there you go. 2 between the legs goals by Forsberg and Duchene. The Duchene one happening against the Ducks. So pretty big win for the Preds, who just on trade deadline day needed to go ahead and prove that they didn't need to make a lot of moves, and they get that win. So what do you think about that one?
I'll say this. I thought a couple of things. First, about the goal. I think it was really interesting that when asked, Matt Duchene mentioned that was, in fact, not something he'd been practicing or working on, and something he probably hadn't done since he was a kid, and even attempted to do. So I think I remember back when Forsberg scored the one that you showed there, he made the comment that there was no other way to score that goal, but since there was that way, he was going to try it, and it worked. So I think you're looking at guys who are really playing at the top of their game. They have the ability to be creative and to problem solve in the moment, and that's really impressive, especially this deep into the season when I think guys start to get a little tired. They're still out there creating, but at the same time, talking about the win over Anaheim, I want to say that John Hines, after that game, even said, it was a win, but it wasn't an identity win, and they need. This is where the kind of the talking point of needing to get past doing the highs and lows thing, ups and downs, needed to stop. And so I've really been paying a lot of attention over this past week slate of games to that identity aspect, because I really feel like moving forward that's going to be key to whether or not they're going to be able to find success in the playoffs. So it's interesting that it's a big win. And a historic night, a lot of stuff going on. But the reality, too, is that, quite frankly, that wasn't a game where they played to their identity for the full 60 minutes. And Hines was really quick to point that out. So,
and it led to what happened next. That's pretty key. And I think John Hines is pretty in tune to that kind of thing. He knows when things are slipping, not just on the scoreboard, but in the way they play. Because the next 2 losses, the next 2 games were 2 losses that were very, very bad. There's almost no point in going over all of it, but the loss to Los Angeles and then the loss to Vegas, I think they were the same score, right? 6-1.
6-1.
12 goals. 12 goals allowed by the Predators in 2 games. They were kind of a terrible team in both of them. They had terrible results. Goaltending was subpar. Offense disappeared. Special teams didn't play well. There was nothing really working well. They did have what is proving to be a very significant person on their team not in the lineup, and that would be Tanner Jeannot. Yeah. We will talk about him in a second, but there's no real excuse, because I think that they did not need such terrible losses there. I mean, like those are two competitive teams. I mean, Los Angeles and Vegas are fighting for playoff spots.
They are.
Anaheim and Philadelphia, the other two games in this week, are not. So
No.
it's kind of some bad wins. And I want to say this about regression. So there's this thing called the regression monster. It just exists. It lives under your bed, and it's very scary. Sometimes it sneaks out and just takes a couple small bites, eating away at you like a little bit at a time. And sometimes it just reaches up and chomps your whole arm off. And that's what happened with these two games. Be careful. It's there. You can't see it.
Can't see it.
But regression is just a thing that happens. Like it will creep up, and all of a sudden your shooting percentage, which has been elevated a little bit, your save percentage has been elevated a little bit. All of a sudden, they just disappear in 2 games, and complete opposite results. Everything is going in for the other team. Nothing is going in for you. So yeah, 2 hungry playoff teams jumped all over the puck. The Preds missed many opportunities.
I'll say this, I think I'd been saying, I don't know if anyone else had been saying it with me, but surely someone out there is bound to agree that you saw the Predators act as a team that struggled to show up against what I would call the dead in the water teams. And somehow, despite doing that, be able to show up big against teams that were in the playoffs or in the playoff picture at least. And you saw that kind of narrative flipped on its head this week. Which, is that a cause for concern? I don't know if I'm going to look at individual game results and say this is a cause for concern, or if I'm going to look at how the team's actually performing in those games and say that going back to my talking point, which I already brought up, going back to identity. Are those games where they're playing to their identity? And, they found some identity at the end of that Ducks game, but these games against the Kings and the Knights, they did not look right.
Yeah, did not look right. And as I mentioned, there was one person missing. Tanner Jeannot was not in the lineup because Friday, or was it Thursday? It was Friday.
Well, I think was the game Thursday, and then I'll look.
The game was Thursday. Yeah, so he came. Yeah, so right Thursday before the Vegas game. Tanner Jeannot gets the word that he's going to have a kid. His wife is basically going into labor, and he has to leave, get on a flight to Nashville, come in town, see his child get born, his first son, and then that's a big moment for anyone. That's a huge moment. And then 2 days later, they play Philadelphia at home, and he plays in that game. So he misses Vegas, and then he plays against Philadelphia, and he plays very, very well. That's what those emojis over your head are all about. So flies away, baby, and then he gets in a fight, he gets an assist, and he gets a goal. So the old Gordie Howe hat trick for Tanner Jeannot on Sunday. But let's back up just a second. So the Predators coming off the 2 games where they got outscored 12-2. They really needed an easy win against Philadelphia. Wasn't easy, but they did get the win. Despite playing a very solid first period, they found themselves down 2-0 after 20 minutes. Again, I don't think there was really much to complain about in that first period, except for maybe a questionable goal allowed by Juuse Saros and maybe some just not timely defense. But then in the first 40 seconds of the period 2, Jakub Trenin tips home a shot by Josi to put the Preds on the board. That ignited the home crowd, fueled the Preds to put up 3 more goals in that period. Trenin scored another with a nice play by Mikael Granlund, who I think played a great game.
Real nice play by Mikael.
Really nice play by Granlund to make that pass. Cunnin scored on his own rebound, also after another play by Granlund. And then Forsberg tipped home a shot by Alex Carrier. Roman Josi with 2 more points, so he's still racking up the points. He's got 81 now, I think. In the third period, both teams kind of sat back a little bit, forcing the other team to press a little bit harder for offense. That's easier for the Preds than the Flyers because they have a lot more skill. The Flyers are really struggling with their offensive skill. And Forsberg and Duchesne were just on another level. They were, again, creating tons of chances. But it was Tanner Jeannot, fresh off his big dad moment, having a big goal-scoring moment where he scores the go-ahead goal with 1 minute and 19 seconds left on the clock, Juuse with the slap pass to Jeannot in the slot. Perfect redirection. Preds win it 5-4. Huge moment and tons of really great stuff for Tanner Jeannot. I want to play his comments here in a second, but I will give you a chance to react to that game.
I think I'd like to see, and I mean, I'm sure someone can pull them up, but as I'm not a numbers guy, I don't know how to do that quickly. But I'd like to see the offensive zone possession time by the Predators in the first period, because, like you said, I think it seemed like the Predators were controlling the flow of that first period, and it would just seem like one little flub, and it would be just Ducks down or Flyers down the ice and score a goal. And it was really bizarre, because it's like they just did. Like they held possession for like 5-6 minutes in the zone, and then I don't know, somebody turned the puck over and it was off to the races. I think it was really bizarre that game ended up being as close as it was, because I think they played a much better game. I just think that the Flyers were able to capitalize on a few mistakes. And I think John Hines made the comment that it wasn't a fun day on the ice the day before practice, I guess, because I didn't go. I don't know what happened, but he must have let him have it, I guess.
He talked about that. He talked about that in the post game. It was kind of interesting because Hines was a little bit like there was almost this suggestion that like Jeannot. So from the sound of it. Well, let me come back to that. Let me play this Jeannot clip first, and then we'll come back to that. So this is Tanner Jeannot after the win, and it's really him talking about what the last 72 hours of his life had been like.
Amazing. We just got home from the hospital this afternoon, so we got him home, and the dog met him, and it's just been new things, new experiences coming every day, and it's awesome. I can't explain it.
You figure this would be a pretty good story. It'd be a pretty good story to tell him 5 or 6 years down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited to be able to share these experiences with him, and can't wait to see him grow up.
I know you've probably already told the story many times, Tanner, but can you take us through what you were thinking on the flight from Las Vegas to Nashville as you were trying to get home to Mom?
Yeah, it was the longest flight of my life. No internet or anything. I couldn't get a hold of anyone or anything. So all I knew was she was in the hospital and pretty much in labor. So that's all I was thinking about. There's no way I was sleeping or anything. But so just 3 hours straight of thinking about that and thinking I'm going to be a dad and letting it all kind of sink in. And the people here did a great job. Brandon Walker got me on a flight right away, and it was just incredible, and I can't thank everyone enough for helping me get back.
Yeah, that was a cool moment for him after the game. If you heard earlier in the clip, that was Nick Cousins walking by saying, I don't know, something about Tanner, just rooting him on, and then Brandon Walker, who is just everything for the team operations for that. I mean, he does everything from scheduling hotel stuff to giving them their per diems for the day. Like, he does everything. So Brandon Walker is a glue guy for all operations for that team. So he's the guy probably to set up, okay, where's your flight? Let's get you to the airport, all that stuff. So really a cool moment for the team too. I mean, everyone was happy for Tanner. I mean, I talked to Jakob Trenin. He was just saying that he did how much he deserves everything that he got over the last few days. And Roman Josi too. So but what I wanted to say about the John Hines thing. So I think it was Brooks Bratton that asked him, what was the identity of the team seemed back. And part of that is because Tanner Jeannot was back in the lineup, and, they didn't have that in Vegas. So there was this kind of suggestion that Tanner Jeannot is a significant part of that. And John Hines, I apologize, I don't have the clip with me or on here, but he said something like, we had a really tough practice on I guess it was Saturday when they got back. And it was, there was a conversation where Tanner basically told the team, I'm really sorry that I had to leave. And I had to, he was like, I apologize for not being part of that game. I could have made a difference. And instead of kind of framing it like that and then saying, but obviously you had a baby, it's okay. Hines didn't really do that. He was kind of like, yeah. And so we had a tough conversation, and then he was back in the lineup, and we won, and our identity was back. I think he was trying to say, this is how important Tanner is to our team, but it kind of came across like he messed up or something. Like it was a very strangely worded thing. And then later Brooks asked a similar question, was like, what was that conversation like with Tanner? And he was kind of like, he kind of repeated the same thing. Again, I don't think at all that that's what Hines was suggesting, but it was just kind of an odd moment. Hines has been kind of on one for the last week where he's not really been as maybe as forgiving about his players as he has been in the past. I think he's seen some things on the ice that he doesn't like, and he's been a little bit ornery about it. And obviously they've had some losses there that have affected that. But anyways, I just thought it was kind of interesting.
That's a marked change, I would say, in kind of demeanor and approach to those things. So it's a little bit surprising, but I mean, you can't really say, like, look at the results of those 2 games in the middle of the week and go, no, everything's fine. Like, no, those were ugly. I mean, there's no way around it. So I get it on a certain level.
And again, I just want to reiterate, I do not think that Hines was faulting him for leaving and going to see his child being born. I think that was not what he was saying at all. But there was just this moment where I was like, this is how important Tanner is to the team. He is a huge part of that team's identity. And it's crazy to think about, but he really is. Like, they look very different with him in the lineup. And Yakov Trenin after the game, he said basically the same thing, but he said, the last 2 games have not been good for us. And they were glad to have him back in the lineup. That essentially that was all he said.
But he only missed one of those games, realistically.
Right. Yeah. So, sorry. Yes. The one game. Right. They lost their identity in Los Angeles, and then they lost a person who's key to getting their identity back in the second game. Right.
But I think what's hard, and if you look back over the past several seasons, and you kind of look at some of those situations where they say traded for someone like Cody McLeod or brought in somebody who was supposedly good in the locker room or whatever it was, or an identity guy or a glue guy or a guy that holds the team together. It's always some cagey, wily veteran who's good at fighting, or at least willing to fight. I don't necessarily want to say good at fighting, but willing to drop the gloves for little to no reason. And then you kind of take away from, like, this past week and some of those conversations that, here's this, completely undrafted at every level player who's come in and proven himself time and time again. And now and he's the guy they're saying they're not saying, but he's the guy that seems to be setting the tone for identity or playing at an identity level for the team. So, I mean, I guess that's good that you've got someone that's actually a role player on the ice to be someone who's a difference maker in the locker room or for team identity and mentality. But at the same time, it's kind of a different look than we've been given, or at least we've been used to for the past few seasons.
The person that I keep thinking Tanner Jeannot is mostly going to be compared to, and the more I see it, the more it's going to become apparent. Now, I hope he doesn't get a certain aspect of this personality, but he just seems like Tom Wilson to me. I mean, Tom Wilson has a ton of skill, and he's also that guy. He is an identity guy, and he gets 200 hits a year. He scores 20 to 25 goals. He's got a lot of skill. He gets under the skin of the opponents. He has some suspension issues. He plays beyond the whistle, he crosses that line. Tanner doesn't do that as much. And I don't even know if Tom Wilson fights. I kind of think he doesn't, but I think he just plays pretty dirty. So he's not exactly like that. It's not a perfect comparison, but that is who I think about, because you could find guys. There's a ton of identity guys out there. You mentioned Cody McLeod. Cody McLeod, that's kind of what he was about. But that dude couldn't play with the puck at all. He just was not a puck. So like that wasn't his skill. And even Tutu, what?
I'm always nervous that he's somewhere around here.
Oh, okay. Even Jordan Tutu didn't have the skill that Tanner Jeannot has. I mean, Tutu's a very different kind of player, very, much more reliant on speed and stuff. But But even Tutu, when he was here, like his identity was he was gonna lay huge hits. He was gonna scrap with guys. He was gonna get in a fight. He was gonna body up with people. And he could. I mean, I think his best year he had 20 goals, maybe, and maybe didn't even have that. Tanner Jeannot is going to be like a perennial 20-goal scorer every year, based on what I'm seeing. I mean, he just seems like that kind of guy. So, anyways, we talked a lot about him. I think he was a big part of that. But the win against Philadelphia was a really big one. I mean, they needed to break that losing skid. They needed to get 2 points on the board. I think they briefly jumped up into third place. They might be back down to the wild card. They're holding on to that top wild card spot, though. I mean, they are right there. They've got some room. Dallas is coming on strong. Of course, Vegas is. Los Angeles is. Even Vancouver is playing better now. Like there's another, other teams are coming up. So there's a lot to think about in terms of moving forward for this team. But I do want to talk about the trade deadline moves just briefly, and then also we're going to talk about Juuse Saros. Before we do that, I do want to mention HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. So it's all about convenience with HelloFresh. Not only do you get your ingredients pre-proportioned so you don't overbuy or waste food, but it's easier than ever to get filling meals on the table in a snap with options like their family-friendly stuff, quick and easy recipes. We had one of those this past week that was like a pasta with pork roast Parmesan. It was like roast, but what am I trying to say? It was like the meat was pork, but it was like ground pork,
Mm-hmm.
ground pork, but it was like in a Parmesan. So there's cheese on it. It was great. It was really, really good. Took less than 30 minutes to put together. Delicious. And all of their stuff is delicious. The HelloFresh chefs know how to diversify the menu with seasonal recipes like salmon limon or pasta primavera. And in the fall, you get all kinds of cool fall recipes, like some good chili and stuff like that. Pick your favorites from 50 different weekly options. Skip weeks when you need to. We do that every now and then. If we go out of town for a week, we'll skip that week, and then right after that, we'll come right back to it. You can change your delivery date, update your preferences, all in the HelloFresh app. So if you want to try it, and I strongly suggest you do, go to HelloFresh.com/Preds16 and use the code Preds16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 gifts. You get 16 free meals here. That's a lot of free food. 16 free meals, Preds16, and yeah, HelloFresh.com/Preds16. There you go.
Alex, I'm not a numbers guy, but 16 free meals is a lot of free meals.
What's the stats on that? How many free dinners are you getting if you have 16 free meals? Break the stats down.
How many? Well, depends on how many meals there are in a day, and we know that varies from day to day, from home to home. So, you could potentially have 16 free dinners.
There you go.
If you just eat one meal a day.
So, we got to recap these trade deadline moves for just a minute, because they happened last Monday, or didn't happen last Monday. And but I do want to talk about one in particular. So Forsberg obviously not moved, right?
Right.
Not traded, and then now he's like scored in every game. Like he's still scoring. Crazy. He has 37 goals now. He's going to get to 40, which is crazy. It's been so long coming for the Predators to have a 40-goal scorer, and we're finally going to get it this year, I think. And so Forsberg is not moved, as we predicted last week. We didn't think he was going to.
I feel like you predicted this for a while, Alex.
Yeah, we've been kind of talking about this for a while, that we did not think he was going to get moved.
Yeah.
The bigger move, though, is they got this defenseman Jeremy Lauzon.
Lauzon? I don't know.
Lauzon. I'm going to say Lauzon. Jeremy Lauzon for a second-round pick. Talk about that in a second. They also made a couple minor league moves. Frederick Allard sent to Los Angeles for Braden Burke. He's going to play in Milwaukee. Alex Biega is a defenseman from Toronto for future considerations. He's going to play in Milwaukee. But let's talk about Lauzon, because I actually think he looks better than people – he looks better than I thought he would.
I agree. I'll say this, I think, you see a lot of knee-jerk reaction when this trade is made initially. I think a lot of people start pulling stats to show, oh, look where he is in relation to this or that or the other player. And I think it's not really taking the big picture into consideration. And I think back to what probably really shifted the needle the most for me. And some people might laugh about this, but it was a Twitter thread / rant / whatever you want about it by of course, everyone knows and loves Angry Preds fan, where he discussed kind of the deployment that Lauzon had seen in Boston, and how that probably wasn't very helpful for his development, and how what he thinks the Predators probably ended up seeing was a player that had the potential to turn into a lot more than he was if used and treated and trained the right way. So, when I try to withhold judgment immediately, I've done that in the past. It's gotten me in trouble a few times by expecting big things out of guys like Goodbranson, but which apparently he's just fine in Calgary. But either way, the fact of the matter is, with Lauzon, I have gone into watching him play with an open mind, and I have appreciated what he's been able to do. There was like a little gaffe yesterday in the game where he kind of fell down, but I mean, stuff like that happens. Go ahead.
I think to your credit, like you could make a very long list of Preds third defensemen that the fan base just wants to ship off. Matt Irwin, Dan Hamhuis, Goodbranson, like you mentioned, Ben Harper. All of these people are. I'm probably forgetting a lot. I mean, even Anthony Boteto at one point, even though he became a fan favorite at one point, he people didn't like him. So like there were so many. There's so many of those guys. You have to remember like what this job is. The third defenseman pair is not going to play a ton of minutes in the playoffs. They're going to be used a lot more in the regular season, especially this late. You need more depth than you need anything. And you're not going to get, for the price you're going to pay for these guys, you're going to get what you pay for. Like, you're not going to get a Roman Josi or a Matthias Ekholm or even a Fabro or a Carrier on that third pairing unless you pay a lot of money, unless you have a $40 million blue line. So these guys are what they are. Now, having said that, I think that there's something that they saw in Lauzon that I think is probably why they got him here. For first of all, I think he's actually quicker with he's a faster skater than I anticipated. For a bigger guy, he's like 6'1", 200, not huge, but he's bigger, sort of bigger. He's quicker than I thought he would be. Like, he can skate better. He's definitely a better skater than Philip Myers, that's for sure. And he's better with the puck. I think he has more instincts with the puck. He's not as quick as Jeremy Davies, I don't think. And so Lauzon being with Matthias Ekholm is, I don't know that works well. I mean, maybe it will, but maybe that's how it'll. I mean, obviously with Fabro out, that's the only option. But I think he's just better than people thought, because I think what happens is, for some reason in hockey, we forget that, or a lot of people forget that systems are a thing. Like, that John Hines has a system that, is different from the Seattle system. It's different from Colorado. It's different from the one in Dallas or St. Louis. It's like there's similarities, and systems in hockey are not perfect. They're not always they don't always dictate everything that happens on the ice, because guys are using their skill and they're acting, improvising, and things happen in crazy ways on the ice. But for some reason, like in other sports, a team trade for a player or acquire a player who had a bad year last year. But the reason they had a bad year is because they were in a system that didn't work. Like, they were in a system that they didn't make any sense for. Like, they were a speedy running back that could catch passes, and they were in a system that was like heavy run. Like they didn't throw a lot. So that guy coming to a team that throws a lot more to the running backs makes sense. And no one thinks, oh, well, that's a terrible acquisition. He had a bad year. Look at his stats. But in hockey, that's what happens. It's like someone is like, oh, well, let's go pull all the stats from how he is in Seattle. Okay, well, wow, Jeremy Lozon is not very good. Look at his below average shooting, and his offensive production is not good. His defense is bad. Well, he played in a certain system there, and he played in a system that, like, frankly, is not very good. Seattle is terrible right now. I think that they saw a skill set in Lozon, probably when they played against him, and apparently John Hines has wanted this guy for a few years now, that they really liked and that can fit well with what they do, because their system really emphasizes that their defensemen play behind the play, like that they are playing more defense. He's not going to have to pinch up at all. He's not, right. Which is, I think that the way that the Seattle wants to play, with a really rotating, very active defense, and he's going to be allowed to sit back and read plays from a better angles. He's going to be able to just get passes up the ice to his forwards and let them go create. So I think that Jeremy Lozon actually kind of fits. That's what I see.
I have to agree, and I want to say too. You mentioned, like, players not having a good season and getting traded. I mean, could you make the argument, I would say, for the reason Kevin Fiala has found success in Minnesota and wasn't finding it here, was that the system that was in place at the time of his tenure in Nashville didn't necessarily fit with his skill set.
Maybe, yeah, for sure. Because with Laviolette, he was going to have to rotate a lot. He was going to have to play back on defense. He was going to have to cover for when defensemen pinch up. And that's not really Kevin Fiala's strength. I don't know a ton about Dean Evason's system or whatever. I mean, I know what I've seen, that they're very good. But yeah, I think that's probably likely. He also just didn't mesh well with a lot of guys here. I think there were some issues there, but yeah, for sure. Yeah, Kevin Fiala going from one team and not really reaching his full potential, and then jumping to a very new system with a coach he played with before. Yeah, I could see that.
And then, of course, Granlund coming in and not being super, doesn't not really fitting into the Laviolette scheme, but then becoming a huge producer, a very important player in the John Hines scheme, makes a lot of sense too.
Same thing. Yeah, exactly.
So, well, we figured that out. You're welcome, America.
And it makes, again, I also want to say this. It still is an overpay. Second round pick for that. You don't pay second round pick prices for third pairing defensemen. That's terrible. They can make it hurt less if they sign him to a reasonable contract. If the contract they get him out of this RFA deal is like a 3-year deal worth about $3 million, you could pay that guy $1 million a year to play, or less, or whatever it is. Get a really cost effective deal out of that. You can make that second round pick feel a lot better, right?
Right, and I think too, if you look, the team has re-signed Borowiecki. Benning's contract is up at the end of the season. They haven't re-signed him. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not saying anything, just saying.
Yeah, I bet that they re-sign him. I mean, they say they want to re-sign him. It makes sense. So okay, so that's the Lozon take I had. Just from what I've seen so far. Again, we've only seen him in 4 games, so we need to see a little bit more. But
right,
some good things there. Real quick, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. Juuse Saros, he has not been great in his last 7 games. A sub 900 save percentage. He's not stopping as many high danger chances. His sort of usual skills at puck tracking and reading the play, they've been kind of down. They're not really, kind of lacking in that area. I'm not really sure what's happening. It could just be a slump. Could be that he's tired. I would worry more if this 7-game slump turns into a 10-game slump and it gets worse there. But if he had 1 or 2 great games this week, I think that would turn the narrative. What do you think?
Yeah, there's the part of me that says you can never criticize a goalie in Nashville, like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But I mean, realistically, they have ridden Saros very hard this season. I don't like the argument that, it's too much, because he is younger, but he is playing, a full game. He's out there the entire time. It's a high stress situation. I can't imagine being in that position. I feel like if you were going to ride him hard one year, that this is probably the year to do it. For a variety of reasons, age, skill, the fact that he gets on really good hot streaks. He had a strong start to the season, whereas he had kind of been traditionally a slow starter. And the fact that, Riddick as a backup is serviceable, but definitely not the caliber we've been used to seeing on the ice over the past few seasons when Saros was the backup or when Rinne was the backup. So I think, I don't know that that's a great argument, the tired thing. I just think I want to say slump, but you talked about regression earlier, the regression monster, which I'm still kind of keeping an eye out for, although you said it's invisible, but I'll have to look more specifically into this folklore when we get done. But I think you're probably just seeing a little bit of regression. It's happening, is it the worst time for it to be happening? Not really. They've also, won quite a lot of games recently, so it's not as big of a concern. But I would rather have that regression now than maybe when the playoffs start. So
they need him. They need him for after April is done, right?
Yeah,
so they need him then. I would not be worried about Juuse Saros. I think he will be just fine. I don't think my instinct says it's not a tired thing, that he's not tired. Mostly because I think his skill set lends itself to being really, the more work he gets, the better. And also I think he also he kind of seems like the kind of guy that is pretty hard on himself. I mean, he might not visibly show all the time, but that when he goes through a series of games like this, he is going to figure out what has happened and why he's not playing as well.
Yeah.
I think he gets that from his sort of his background, his heritage, where he comes from. That's kind of how they operate. And I think Rinne was the same way. And I think he's going to find a solution. I mean, it's not like there's some big hole in his game. Any holes in his game were there before. They're maybe a little bit exaggerated now, just because he's not reading the plays quite as well. But he's still in phenomenal shape. He's physically, he's got all the tools. So I think he will be fine.
I think so too.
But it's interesting to think about the fact that you can't criticize a goalie. I don't think. I mean, I think I haven't seen as much of that, but yeah, you're right about with Rinne. You could not say anything bad about Rinne.
I remember a few seasons ago, and I'm not going to name any names, but there was a really bad loss. Rinne had been in the net, and we were kind of discussing who we wanted to talk to after the game. And it was we need to request Pekka Rinne. We need him to come out here and talk about this. And everyone was they'll never send him out here. He's got to answer for something sometime. And eventually they did bring him out. And I want to say that discussion that we had with Pekka Rinne was the saddest discussion I've ever been a part of, because he was clearly very heavily feeling the weight of his performance after the game and was not wearing it well. He was down on himself. He was frustrated with himself. And the fact that he had to come out and talk to everybody, and not that anyone was being hostile or anyone was asking unfair questions, it was just, you could tell that he needed, after a loss, he needed some time to process. And I'm sure, you don't see Saros brought out after losses either. And I'm not saying it's they're protecting goalies or anything like that, but I do want to say that the amount of respect that people had for Pekka Rinne, not just on the team, in the media, in the crowd, in Nashville, in the arena, or anywhere. But think about how you look at Saros as kind of the heir apparent, as the one that everyone said it's a father-son thing with them, and a lot of people really buy into that narrative. So he's going to get that same kind of you can't say anything bad about him. Not that people are out there waiting to say bad things, but I look at other teams and I look at their fans, and there are some out there, and it's the first person they're going to blame is going to be the goalie, and their solution is usually get him out of here. This guy's terrible. And so it's when you even start to tiptoe into are you worried about Saros? I just kind of get this I'm just, bracing for whatever is going to happen next. When you started to say that, I was thinking about telling you to duck really quickly because I'm sure someone was going to throw something at you from somewhere. And I don't know if you're worried about, random mythical creatures or angry fans in your house or not, but
not yet. I think I'm safe from that.
Oh, good. Okay. You never know.
Yeah. Okay, so the week ahead, the Predators only play 2 games this week. So they go from 4 last week to only 2 this week. They have a Tuesday home game against Ottawa, 7 p.m. start. That is a game they need to win. Ottawa's obviously not very good. They haven't been good for a while. They need to beat Ottawa at home on home ice. And then they go to Buffalo. Buffalo has tripped up some top teams this year. I don't know if you noticed this, but Buffalo has been somewhat of a dragon. What's the word?
Slayer.
Dragon Slayer. Yeah, there you go. They've been knocking off big teams. That doesn't mean really anything. It's just probably the way things have turned out. But Buffalo's they're not terrible.
No.
So that's Friday. So they play at Buffalo on Friday. So road game there. And then they don't play again until the following Tuesday. So only 2 games this week. They really need to win both of these games. I feel pretty strongly.
If you look at the caliber of opponent they're playing and you combine that with the fact that they are on a mission to regain their identity and play a full 60, these are absolutely must-win games. They're 4 points that you want to get. You want to get them without having to fight too hard for them as well, especially considering the amount of rest they're getting between the last game and the next game. Even between the games, they've got 2 full days off.
Right.
And then going into having several days off before their next game, you got to win these 4 or these 4 points, these 2 games. And is this Ottawa game going to be the first time Austin Watson's been back to the Predators?
Is he still playing for them? Is he? I thought he was injured at one point.
Oh, is he injured? Okay. Well, I know he was playing earlier in the season, but I'm going to be honest. I don't keep up with who's injured on a lot of other teams.
He has only played. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, he played for them 2 days ago. Yep, he'll be there probably.
Has he been back to Nashville since the trade?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if we see, even with all these days off, I wonder if we see Riddick.
It would give Saros a really long rest.
I bet if
you did.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Riddick.
I wouldn't either, and I think Riddick can win these games. I don't think it's.
Well, I don't think he'd play in both of them. I think he'd just be in one.
Well, I think he can win either one of them.
Oh yeah, right.
I think people are very quick to blame Riddick for some reason, and I think it has a lot to do with what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But
how many points does Roman Josi get this week? 2 games.
2 games. Are we turning into one of those gambling shows? Let's see. Points for Josi. Let's say he gets at least 3.
That's a good call. I think 3 is
at
a good
least
call.
3.
Yeah, at least 3.
At least. Yeah.
So
I'd be surprised.
Tie the record.
Yeah. Huh? Say it again.
I think that would tie the record in the record 84 because he's 81 now.
Yeah. I think he at least ties it. I think he scores 1 goal and 2 assists minimum.
There you go.
Seems like
all right. That is going to do it for our show. Thanks everyone for watching or listening. You can check out all of the hockey coverage you want at A2ZSports.com. You can go to On the Forecheck as well and check out everything there. Follow me on Twitter at AlexRD1. Follow Shaun on Twitter at SCSOTF. And we will see you next week.